Your own team faces an unexpected turn of events that delivers a striking lesson about respect. Subscribe to the channel and share your opinions in the comments. This story is going to surprise you. It was a hot, sunny day when Snoop Dogg discreetly arrived at the parking lot of the renowned Luxury Motors, the luxury dealership he had recently acquired in Sunville, a city that was always bustling. Sophisticated, shiny cars adorned the entrance of the place, gleaming under the intense sunlight. However, he chose to park his modest SUV in a discreet space at the back. Dressed in a casual way, wearing a grey hoodie, worn-out jeans and simple sneakers, he was far from drawing attention. It was a strategic choice. Snoop wanted to observe the business's operations without being recognized as the new owner. Walking calmly toward the entrance, he was ready to find out how his team treated customers, with no filters or formalities. Upon entering, Snoop noticed a small group of employees near the reception desk, chatting and laughing casually. The muffled sound of laughter and the murmur of conversation traveled through the glass doors. As soon as he opened the door, the cool air from the air conditioning enveloped him, bringing immediate relief from the intense heat outside. The showroom was immaculate, lit by ceiling lights that highlighted the shine of the luxury cars. The subtle aroma of new leather filled the air. Conversation ceased quickly when Snoop walked in. He noticed the furtive glances of the employees, their eyes sizing him up from the collar of his hoodie down to his sneakers. The change in the environment was almost palpable, as though the air had grown heavier with judgment. But Snoop did not react. He was there to observe, not to confront. Across the showroom, an elegant figure appeared. Eleanor, a middle-aged woman with striking features and a calculating gaze, walked toward him with confident strides. Her perfectly tailored blazer and impeccably polished heels exuded authority. Holding a clipboard under her arm, her presence was undeniably professional, though she carried a subtle tension. "Excuse me," Elena began, her voice firm and cold, projecting control. "May I help you with something?" Snoop replied with a calm and casual smile, looking at the cars around him. Eleanor narrowed her eyes, analyzing him from head to toe, and her expression, though polite, began to show something more uncomfortable. "Are you looking for a car?" she asked, with a slight tone of doubt that did not go unnoticed. "Something like that," Snoop answered, still smiling, keeping a friendly tone. Elena pressed her lips together briefly before continuing. "Well, we cater to a very specific clientele here. Most of our models require pre-qualification. Maybe I can suggest—" Before she could finish, an employee called from a distance, "Hey, Elena, the delivery guy is here." She turned away momentarily, but cast one last glance at Snoop as if marking her territory. Snoop raised an eyebrow, but kept his light tone, observing every detail of the interaction. "You're assuming I'm not qualified?" Snoop asked, his voice calm but laden with intention. The question caught Elena off guard for an instant, but she quickly recovered her poise, straightening and adjusting her forced smile. "That's not it," she replied, her tone polite but slightly defensive. "I'm just trying to save you some time. Most of our vehicles start in the six-figure range. Perhaps I can direct you to something more affordable." The words hung in the air, the subtext clear, but Snoop kept a serene expression. He processed the implications of what he was hearing, his outward calm contrasting with the uncomfortable reality of her assumptions. The tension was palpable as Elena watched him, as if waiting for his reaction. Snoop looked away, feigning interest in a nearby silver coupe with an aggressive design and flawless finish. He ran his fingertips along the gleaming door handle and then turned to Elena. "A beautiful car, Elena," he commented casually. She lightly furrowed her brows but quickly composed her smile. "Maybe it is," she said in a voice that sounded almost condescending. "When you're ready for a serious consultation. Until then, I must ask you to avoid touching the vehicles." Snoop remained silent for a moment, weighing her words. After a brief pause, he took a step back, put his hands into his pockets, and nodded, indicating that she should go on. "All right, then tell me what you'd recommend for someone like me," he said, his tone calm yet challenging. Eleanor blinked, surprised by his candor, but before she could elaborate a response, he added, "If you think you know what I need, I'm curious to hear it." Her professional veneer cracked slightly, revealing impatience and something closer to irritation. "Maybe I can direct you to a dealership specializing in used vehicles," she replied, with a slight touch of sarcasm. Snoop's smile was subtle, but his eyes remained impassive. He had seen enough. "A big assumption," he said calmly, his words resonating in the silence that followed. For a moment, Eleanor hesitated, clearly affected by his remark. Nevertheless, she quickly regained control, straightened her shoulders and responded. "I'll prepare a list of options," she declared, before hurrying off, her forced confidence masking the discomfort that had arisen. Snoop kept his gaze fixed on Elena as she walked away, his expression remaining impassive. He turned his attention back to the silver coupe in front of him, the faint reflection of his face visible on the polished finish. The day promised to be interesting. Standing in the center of the showroom, he put his hands in his pockets and observed the movement around him. The subtle disdain in Eleanor's posture was hard to ignore, but he limited himself to watching. The team had resumed its activities, although furtive glances were still thrown his way, the silent judgments he had grown accustomed to over the years. A short time later, Elena returned. She held her clipboard tightly, as if it served as a shield. Her steps were quick, and her forced smile betrayed a slight discomfort. "All right," she began, stopping a few feet away from Snoop. "I've gathered some options that might better align with your situation." He tilted his head slightly, her tone capturing his attention. "Situation?" he questioned, his voice calm but inquisitive. Elena remained firm, handing him a printed sheet. "That's right. These are more accessible offers," she explained. "Reliable, economical, and practical models." Snoop took the list without saying a word, his eyes scanning the descriptions. Used vehicles, a sedan, an old SUV, a hybrid compact. His lips nearly formed a slightly amused smile, but he quickly stifled the reaction, folding the paper and placing it in his pocket. "I appreciate the effort," he said, his tone tranquil. Eleanor seemed slightly disarmed by his response, but she quickly regained her posture, resting her hands on her hips. "Look," she began, lowering her voice as if sharing something confidential. "I'm just trying to be realistic with you. Luxury cars aren't for everyone. I don't want to waste your time." Snoop met her gaze, his expression remaining serene. "And what makes you think I'm not the right customer for this?" Elena hesitated for a brief instant, but quickly replied, "I've been in this business for a long time." "I see," Snoop responded, his voice neutral, almost reflective. "Interesting." There was a moment of hesitation in Elena's eyes, but she held her ground. "I'm just being honest. It's better to make things clear than to build false expectations," she replied with a defensive edge. Snoop let out a light laugh, shaking his head calmly. "Honesty, I like that. How about this then? Let me speak with the owner of the dealership. What do you think? Can you arrange that?" Elena's eyebrows rose, clearly surprised by the suggestion. "That's not possible today," she retorted. "The owner doesn't deal directly with customers. He's a very busy person." "He certainly is," Snoop agreed, still in a calm tone. "But maybe you could call him and let him know I'm here. I bet he'd be interested in meeting me." Eleanor's smile grew tense, almost forced. Irritation began to show on her face. "Look, sir, I'm trying to be polite, but this is getting out of hand. I have other clients to attend to. If you're serious about buying a car, we can schedule an appointment with one of our consultants. Otherwise, Snoop interrupted, his tone still calm but carrying a firmness that made Elena hesitate. She took a deep breath, trying to maintain her composure. "Otherwise, I'll have to ask you to leave," she said, letting the words linger in the air. Snoop stood motionless, staring at her directly. The showroom seemed to freeze, with all eyes fixed on the two of them. Then, calmly, he reached into his pocket and took out his phone. "All right," he muttered, scrolling through his contact list. "I think I'll call the owner directly." Eleanor blinked, surprised and confused. "What are you doing?" "Calling the owner," Snoop replied, putting the phone to his ear. "This is ridiculous," Eleanor began, but she stopped upon realizing that he was speaking on the phone. "Yes, it's me," said Snoop. "I'm here at the dealership. It's all right, just a little misunderstanding. Could you let the staff know I'm here?" He ended the call without haste and put the phone back in his pocket before turning again to Elena. "They should be here soon," he announced. Elena stared at him, mouth agape. "Who did you just call? Was it the owner?" Snoop did not reply immediately. Instead, he looked around the showroom, observing the employees who were now paying full attention to the situation. Finally, he turned his gaze back to Elena and, in an almost playful tone, said, "I think we'll find out soon enough." The showroom was immersed in a heavy silence, the tension nearly tangible. Elena, visibly uncomfortable, fiddled with the clipboard in her hands, trying to appear busy. But her movements were stiff and nervous, revealing her unease. Snoop, on the other hand, looked relaxed, standing near one of the luxury SUVs. His calm posture only intensified the pressure in the room. The employees scattered around the showroom whispered among themselves, casting furtive glances at both him and Elena, curious to see what would happen next. Suddenly, the sound of the main door opening broke the silence. Everyone's eyes turned to the entrance, where a well-dressed man in a navy blue suit walked in. His shoes gleamed with each firm step on the tiled floor. Wearing a serious but welcoming expression, he immediately fixed his eyes on Snoop and broke into a broad smile. "Snoop!" the man exclaimed, extending his hand to greet him. Snoop returned the handshake firmly, a slight smile appearing on his lips. "Thanks for coming, Vincent," he replied calmly. The atmosphere in the room changed in an instant. The employees froze, and Elena, wide-eyed, almost let her clipboard slip from her hands. Her initial confusion quickly turned to panic. "Wait, Mr. Dogg?" Elena murmured, her voice hesitant and incredulous. Vincent turned to her, shifting from a friendly manner to a sharper, almost cutting tone. "Eleanor, I see you've already met Mr. Dogg," he said, with a clear emphasis on the name. Eleanor blinked several times, struggling to find the words. I didn't realize—" "You didn't realize that he is the new owner of this dealership," Vincent continued, his tone firm. Eleanor's face went pale, and she looked at Snoop, clearly mortified. Vincent turned his attention back to Snoop, looking genuinely apologetic. "I hope this wasn't the kind of reception you were expecting, sir." Before he could go on, Snoop raised a hand, signaling Vincent to stop speaking. "It's all right, Vincent," Snoop said, his voice calm but charged with meaning. "I think Elena and I started off on the wrong foot." The serene yet firm tone made the entire room focus on Elena. Her face was pale, and she took a step back, clutching the clipboard to her chest like a shield. "I'm so sorry," she mumbled, her voice nearly inaudible. "I didn't know—" "Didn't know what?" asked Snoop, still sounding just as calm but with a clear weight in his words. "That someone like me could own a place like this? That someone like me really belongs here?" Elena's eyes widened, and for a moment she looked completely lost, struggling to formulate a response. "I didn't mean—" she began, but the words failed her. The silence that followed was overwhelming. Snoop watched her for a moment, his calm gaze full of intent, then nodded slightly, as if her silence was a sufficient answer. He then turned to Vincent, exuding authority. "Let's gather everyone in the conference room. I think it's time we discuss how things will be handled from now on." The still tense employees began moving toward the conference room. The modern setting, with glass walls and elegant furniture, felt incredibly oppressive at that moment. Elena sat near the back, her previously confident demeanor completely replaced by nervousness. Snoop took his seat at the head of the table with a presence that commanded attention. He was calm and reserved, but his authority was unquestionable. Vincent remained by the door, arms crossed, silently observing, as the team found their places. The nervous whispering that filled the space ceased when Snoop cleared his throat, looking at everyone in the group. "Thank you for joining me on such short notice," he began, his voice firm yet controlled. "For those who don't know yet, my name is Snoop Dogg, and I'm the new owner of Luxury Motors." A murmur of surprise swept through the room, with reactions ranging from curiosity to embarrassment. In the back, Eleanor seemed to sink even further into her chair, avoiding any eye contact. "I came here today dressed casually for a reason," Snoop continued, his voice firm and controlled. I wanted to see how this dealership operates when no one knows who I am. I wanted to feel what a potential customer experiences walking through these doors. He paused, letting his words resonate in the room before continuing. Today's experience was disappointing. I wasn't evaluated by what I could offer, but by what I looked like. I'm not here to point fingers, but we need to talk about what that reveals about this dealership's culture. Elena shifted uncomfortably in her seat, a blush coloring her cheeks. Snoop glanced at her briefly before turning his gaze back to the rest of the team. This isn't just about me. It's about every person who walks through these doors, every customer who, for any reason, doesn't fit some preconceived idea of what a luxury car buyer should look like. Chris, one of the salesmen, raised his hand hesitantly. Snoop nodded for him to speak. "Mr. Dogg," Chris began, visibly nervous. "I believe most of us try to treat customers fairly, but sometimes it's hard not to make assumptions." Snoop nodded, looking thoughtful. "I understand, Chris. We all have biases, whether we admit it or not. But here's the thing. It's not enough to try to be fair. We have to actively challenge those biases. We need to create an environment where everyone feels respected, regardless of appearance, background, or anything else." He paused again, his eyes scanning the room, making sure his message was understood. "This dealership has built a reputation for excellence. But excellence is not just about the cars we sell. It's about the experience we provide. And from now on, that experience will be based on respect, inclusion, and fairness." A murmur of agreement swept through the room, though some faces still showed hesitation. Snoop's gaze settled on Elena, who remained motionless in her chair, her hands tightly clasped in her lap. "Eleanor," Snoop said, his voice gentle but charged with firmness, "I want to give you the chance to speak. Is there something you'd like to say?" All eyes turned to her. Elena hesitated, clearly wrestling with her own shame. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "I made a mistake," she admitted, her cheeks flushed. "I misjudged you, and for that I'm truly sorry." Snoop nodded, his expression serene and difficult to read. "Thank you for saying that. I hope this experience serves as a reminder not just for you but for all of us, because change starts with taking responsibility." He turned again to the group, pressing on with determination. "From now on, we're going to implement new training programs to ensure this dealership reflects the values I stand for. Every customer must be treated with dignity, no exceptions. Does anyone have any objections to that? Now is the time to speak." The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the gentle hum of the air conditioning. No one spoke up, but the weight of Snoop's words hung over everyone. He let the silence linger just enough to underscore his point, before speaking again. "I'm glad to see we're all on the same page," he went on, his voice calm but resolute. "Change isn't always easy, but it's necessary. And this dealership is going to lead by example." Snoop took a step back, his hands resting on the edge of the table. He leaned forward slightly, conveying both strength and sincerity. "Let me make something clear. I didn't come here today to humiliate anyone. I came to understand the kind of culture I've inherited and how we can improve it." His eyes slowly drifted to Eleanor, who sat silently at the back of the room. "Eleanor," he said, his tone softening, making it clear his words were not an attack, but an opportunity. "Elena," Snoop repeated, his voice firm yet understanding, "you are an experienced manager, and I'm sure you worked hard to get where you are. But today was a wake-up call, not just for you, but for all of us." Eleanor raised her gaze for the first time, facing him directly. "I understand," she replied, her voice trembling yet sincere. "I was wrong, and I'll do whatever it takes to fix that." Snoop nodded slowly. "I believe in second chances," he stated simply. "But responsibility comes first. I'm going to meet with you personally to discuss the next steps. For now, let's focus on moving forward." He straightened and turned his attention to the rest of the team. "We're not just selling cars here. We're building trust, creating relationships, and representing a standard of excellence. If you're all on board with that, I'll be here to support you every step of the way." This time, the murmur of agreement was louder and more genuine. The team seemed to relax, letting go of the initial tension and embracing a sense of renewal. Even Vincent, standing near the door, nodded in approval. Snoop offered a small smile, the kind that shows relief mixed with determination. "All right, let's get back to work. And remember, how we treat people is more important than anything we sell." The employees began to leave the conference room, their expressions marked by a new sense of purpose. Elena lingered nearby, hesitant. When she finally approached Snoop, her hands fidgeted nervously. "Mr. Dogg," she began in a low voice, "I just wanted to thank you for giving me the chance to do better. I promise I won't let you down." Snoop studied her for a moment before replying firmly. "I hope not," he said. "Remember, actions speak louder than words." Eleanor nodded, her serious expression showing her determination to change. "I believe people can change if they really want to," Snoop concluded, watching her leave before turning to Vincent. "Let's schedule a meeting with the team next week. I want to make sure everyone understands what we expect from now on." Vincent smiled, genuine respect showing on his face. "You're the boss," he replied. When Snoop returned to the showroom, he looked around. The cars gleamed under the afternoon light, reflections dancing on their flawless surfaces. He knew there was still a lot of work ahead, but for the first time that day, he felt optimistic. This wasn't just about running a dealership. It was about creating something bigger, a place where people were valued for who they were, not for how they looked. Snoop was ready to lead the way. Later that same week, Snoop saw Elena warmly assisting a new customer, a young artist dressed in a casual style, very much like what he had worn on the day of his visit. She listened attentively, her behavior demonstrating genuine interest and respect. It was a clear sign that change was beginning to take hold. For Snoop, that small victory confirmed that the journey to make luxury motors more inclusive and respectful was indeed possible. Disclaimer: all stories shared on this channel are entirely fictional, created for entertainment purposes. Our aim is to promote narratives that inspire empathy, respect, and positive values. Any similarity to real events, individuals, or organizations is purely coincidental and unintentional. These stories do not contain political or religious opinions and seek, above all, to entertain and reflect on social issues in a constructive way.